Hi, all. This week we are going to be looking at media through the lens of the audience. And the idea is that we are an active audience. Much of media scholarship in the past has been done on the message itself. What is being communicated? What did the producer or the director mean by that movie? What did they mean by that song? So, but instead of focusing on what the message says, in this type of media scholarship, we look at the audience itself because we have human agency. Remember, the very first week of class, we talked about structure and agency. And agency means that we have our own ability to determine things. We have that independence, that decision making capability. So, the term audience is a little bit of a problematic term. It invokes the idea of a whole mass, large number of people receiving information all the same way. Maybe people are in a movie theater, they're all together and they're viewing that movie together or listening, you're at a concert listening to a performer. But audiences is much more complicated than that. It's not as simple as just a group of people watching the same thing. Because of who we are in our backgrounds and our own experiences, we will perceive things differently. So this is saying that the audience is active. It's not just a passive audience. So it's not it's not just the audience just has to show up. That's yes, numbers are important to advertisers. They want to know how many people, but also significant is who makes up the audience, the composition of the audience. So we're not just passive where we are dosed with something like getting injected a shot, but we are interpreting things that are delivered to us. So we are real people with lives and histories and social networks, and we're talking to people, and it affects who we are and the way that we consume media products. So the active audience theory means that we are very involved and that the way that we receive information and interpret media is determined by our age, by our ethnic group, by our social class. All of those things can determine how we perceive a TV show, a movie, an article on a website. So the audience is not passive and it's not all the same. It's not all we're not all cookie cutter people looking exactly the same. That we are different and we come to it from different perspectives, and we're very active. So we engage with the text. Remember, the word text is a word that refers to any media product. So it could be the song that you're listening to, it could be the website, it could be the social media, it could be the magazine, whatever it is. It's, the word text is an academic term for any media product. So we make choices, we interpret meanings from our media text. So it's the audience that is actually producing the meaning of that media product. So an active audience theory, we don't attempt to understand what the media do to people, but we focus on what people do with the media. So you've probably heard me say, does the media control you? Does your smartphone control you, or do you control your media use? Do you control your smartphone, or is it controlling you? So this focus is much more on how we interact with media devices. So a question that I just want you to think about, if we were in the classroom, we would talk about it, but think about it. When you enter a room where your TV is located, or when you pull up Netflix on your phone, do you turn it on and then flip through, browse through all the different choices, searching for something to watch? Or do you first look at a listing or see what is on and then you go to that channel, or do you flip through everything? Now, are you very intentional, or are you just choosing something that just pops up there because you need something to be entertained? My husband will sit there and flip through channels or go through Netflix and go through all the different listings and and I'm just like, let's just pick something. That's how I am. I'm very intentional. I want to go watch something where he likes to browse more than I do. So I think that's, you hear that between husband and wives quite a bit, where so one of them wants to flip through all the different channels and just really browse, and the other one really wants to be watching something and not wasting time flipping through channels. That's I can't say that it is identified with one sex or the other, but it is interesting to see how people respond and how we control our media use differently. So, active audience says that media consumers are competent. We use our media to fashion our own narrative. And also that an active audience that we can also now create media. And we do that through our social media feeds, the image that we have on Instagram that we've created. So the line between who's producing the media and who's consuming it is blurred. Now there's a term called prosumer, where we are users, but we also are now generating our own content as well, such as when I use YouTube to put this video on Moodle. That's me being a prosumer of that as well. So, in what way are audiences active? We have interpretive freedom. We may not perceive or construct the meaning of a movie that was intended by the producer or the song. The lyrics of the song may mean something differently to me than what the writer of the song intended. So, not all audience members are going to construct the same meaning from the same media text. Some songwriters like that. They want people to interpret and make up their own meaning. Others have a more, they're much more specific and not maybe as vague with their lyrics. And there can be collective interpretation as well, where it's a social thing that we're doing together. We talk about different songs. What does that mean to you? What did you think about that TV show? And that we are sharing that together. So it's a social category as well. And depending upon our social class or social category, that can also affect the way that we interpret and analyze images. But maybe you go on a date and you go see a movie together. So it's a social setting, or you're watching TV with the family, going to concert with friends. So it becomes very social as well. So it's part of our social relationships as well. And so we might have like what you could call a second screen, where we talk about programs or things or movies or concerts after the fact. We talk about them together and interpret them together as well. So reading a media text, polysemy is the idea that a media text, remember that can stand for a TV show, a news broadcast, a magazine, a book, a radio station. But media texts have multiple meanings. An example of this is the case of The Cosby Show. Several studies have been done on this show, and they show that there were different interpretations of this show based upon your race, where white audiences were like, "Oh wow, this is the end of racism because we have a show with a upper middle class, professional, African American family, so we've solved everything." Where black audiences saw it as a positive thing, but knew that there was no end to the racism with that show. So it's kind of interesting to go to look at those kind of studies and see how people have gained different meanings on that show when it was on the air. Now it probably has even different meaning today because of Bill Cosby and his, legal problems that he's had over the last 3 or 4 years. So it has all kinds of different interpretations depending upon who you are, but also when you're looking at it as well. So there was a study done in Britain by David Morley in 1980, and he was looking at a TV show. It was like a TV magazine program in Britain. It was called Nationwide. So he interviewed different people about this TV show, and he found that there were preferred meanings. So the preferred meaning was what the producer, the writer, what they wanted the audience to receive. And then depending upon social class, different social classes were decoding it differently. So if it was the managerial class, they saw it, the bank managers, they fully accepted the dominant message. Where those that were more in the working class, that they were opposed to the message, they disagreed with the message, they rejected it. I mean, there were some that negotiated it. They accepted it on the whole, but slightly, not totally accepted it the way that the producer intended it. So I think this is an interesting way for us to think about different types of products that we are using. Do we oppose it? Do we negotiate with it? Or do we accept the dominant message that is intended? So an active audience, people, we voluntarily decide how we're going to use the media. And our media use is motivated by our needs and our goals. Um, for us, for ourselves, is it for entertainment? Is it to escape? Why are we using the media that we use? So let's look at a web page. This is a web portal, and it's from Vox that I just pulled up yesterday. So this is an example of a portal where the user, the reader, has a lot of different places where they could click. So there's a lot of different options. So each individual is going to click, or they might choose different articles to start with based upon their needs. Maybe their prior experience with this web page, if it's one that they've used before. Maybe they want to have certain results, and if it's a story that's negative about President Trump, maybe someone who doesn't like President Trump, they're going to click on that story because it kind of reinforces what they already think. Where someone who likes President Trump may not read it at all because they don't want to read anything that's negative about him. So people are going to actively engage media and how they're using and making different decisions on a media product. So let's look at this. This is the New York Times and the New York Post. This is just from this week as well. The New York Post is a very tabloid kind of oriented. It's not aimed at a really high educational level. It's run by Murdoch, his group of businesses. And the structure and appearance of each page is very different. The New York Times is a old standard, very leader, very elite, lots of, a high educational level, very highly respected. And so depending upon if the person's a young individual, college graduate, um, an elite person, they may choose to only use the New York Times and they ignore the New York Post. But you can see that just by the color and the typefaces and the layout of each page, how they are really giving a certain product to their audience. They know who their audience is and how they need to give them their information. So they're wanting a positive result from their readers. So we're going to talk about a couple of theories here. One is fraction of selection. This, I think, is really easy to understand. It's like, what kind of reward will I get from watching this media product based upon the effort that I have to do to get to that product? So each person, if I have to click through 100 different web pages to get to what I want, that's way too much effort for me usually for the reward that I might get. So people are weighing the level of gratification they get from how much effort they have to go to secure the reward. So how much does it cost me? That's a lot of, that's effort. I have to work to make money. So how much effort does that cost? What does it cost me if I have to use that product? Am I willing to pay that? Or if it's taking forever to load that page, or my internet is down and I can't get to Netflix, am I going to get enough of a reward where I'll keep checking back, and if my effort is into it, so that I can keep getting a reward from that product? Is it worth what I'm having to go through to get to that product? And this leads us to the uses and gratification theory. And this is what your journal is going to be about this week. So we're going to talk quite a bit about it. So stick with me here. People are engaged by and motivated by the need that they have from a media product. Herta Herzog, I love her name. She was a researcher way back in the 1940s. She interviewed 100 radio soap opera fans. Now, this is before we had soap operas on TV that were, during the daytime. They were on radio before they came to TV. TV wasn't out yet. And so she interviewed 100 of these soap opera fans and identified that there were three major types of gratifications that they received from listening to those soap operas. One was emotional release. They connected with it emotionally. Opportunity for wishful thinking, and they're like, oh wow, I wish I had a boyfriend like that, or a wife like that, or I wish I had that kind of lifestyle. And also advice, just how do I work out this problem in my life? And they may get that information from this radio soap opera. And so that leads us to a researcher, Arthur Azaberger. He looked at all kinds of different media products and talked about found out what people are getting when they use those kind of products. So this slide and the next one will be related to that. So he found that like documentaries, news shows, talk and game shows, that people were satisfying their curiosity and they liked being informed. That makes sense. They were using sitcoms and comedy shows to be amused, religious shows to identify with a higher power and the divine and God, those type of things. A cop show or a law show to reinforce their belief in justice. If they liked romance novels or soap operas, to reinforce a belief in romantic love. Media event like a sports event, to participate vicariously in history, whether it's the Super Bowl or whether it's the man landing on the moon, walking on the moon the first time. People were watching that and they were part of it because they were watching history. A fashion show or soap opera, again, commercials. They were obtaining outlets for sexual drives in a guilt-free context. Horror shows, experiencing the ugly, being scared. Talk shows, sports, award shows, commercials, to find models to imitate, role models. And then maybe travel shows, art shows, opera, ballet, to experience the beautiful things in our world. So those are some of the things, the different media products and what he found that the type of needs, the uses, the gratifications that people were getting from these different media products. So let's dig a little deeper. We're going to look a little closer at uses and gratification. So people use the media to meet particular needs that they have. So the needs could be biological, they could be psychological or social. It's not what the media do to people, but what people do with the media. Just reinforcing what I said before. It focuses on how the audience benefits from a media text, not the actual content of the text. We talked about the very first slide that I showed you. It's not what the message is, it's how the audience interprets that message, what we do with it. So the gratification can come from the content of a program. If it's a genre that we're comfortable with, maybe you're really into anime and it's something you really like, and so you keep watching those type of and reading and watching those type of programs or comic books. Maybe just general exposure to the media. The social context, maybe you're watching it with your family and your friends. I can remember Friday nights, I think it was, back in the 70s, watching, the Partridge Family, and then Donnie and Marie and Donnie had a show, and all of us watching it together. Carol Burnett. So those are all things that we were doing as a family and watching together, and it had that social context to it. No matter where we lived at the time, we would watch those. So now, people's needs influence how they use and respond to the media. So if you are bored, what sort of program do you choose to watch? If you're stressed out, what sort of program do you choose? How does that affect what you're watching? So the same program may gratify different needs in different people. So audiences, they have different needs, and that depends on their background, their personality, and also the situation that they're living in. So there are usually 4 reasons for using media. This is from McQuail, a researcher. And I want you to remember RIDS. You're going to be responding to this in your journal. Relationships, identity, diversion, and surveillance. So personal relationships, we use the media for social interaction. Sometimes could it be a replacement for our own family interaction? It could be. Or we use the media to compensate for a lack of community spirit in our own lives. And sometimes I wonder, do we know more about characters from our favorite TV programs than we know about our own neighbors? That's probably true, at least in America. Next is personal identity. You might like to watch something or read something because you see yourself reflected in that media text. You identify with the characters. You maybe learn different behavior and values from media text. And it also might help you cope with different parts of your identity. You may be unsure about parts of it, and you are learning and building parts of your identity from the things that you interact with. So I started, a hobby of painting over the last couple years, and I watch a lot of art things on YouTube and take different classes digitally, take classes in person too, because it's part of my identity that I like, and it's good for me, and I really enjoy it. It relaxes me, and I'm really engaged in it, and I really enjoy it. So I choose different media products that help me in that area. Next is diversion. I think a lot of us do this. We use media as an escape from everyday life, from problems, from routine. I know that even just a week or so ago, there was so much going on in our world that was negative, and I was reading this kind of heavy book um, that was based on real life, but it was sad and it's a true story, and I just needed to escape. So I picked a novel that was more of a murder mystery type that was pretty um, still a really good, the writing was really good, but it was not quite as heavy as the other book, just because I needed that diversion from everything that was happening in our world at that time. So we use the media to escape, or maybe we use the media as a way to make up for something that we're lacking in our own personal life. And surveillance. We use the media to obtain information about the world around us. It could be the weather, the news, our health, how to avoid the coronavirus, whatever it could be, using it for how to, good informational, important things that we need to know in our life. So it's about each one of us. It's about you. You are active. You use the media for certain reasons, whether it be pleasure, information, to escape. You are responsible for your choices. No one can force you to watch a certain movie or TV show. Your choice of whether or not to use media competes with other choices for need satisfaction. Are you going to hang out with your friends, or are you going to um, be looking at your phone the whole time? Are you going to do your work and your homework, or are you going to play video games? So you're making decisions based upon your need satisfaction in your own environment. So if you pay attention, you are aware of your media choices. So you need to, choose, select a movie to stream or a song to listen to. We are much more active in our own media use. We're not as passive now, where I can go to my Apple Music and I can play exactly what I want to play. I don't have to wait for it to come on the radio and then hit my little cassette tape and record it. Everything's right there. So we have a lot more choice today than we've ever had. Also, you can't make a value judgment about media. It affects people differently. And we will interpret media differently from one another. So your journal this week, it's all written out on Moodle, but you're going to explain in your own words the 4 basic needs that people use media for to satisfy, the RIDS that we just talked about. You're going to list a specific media product for each category. There's a category that says like social media, favorite TV show, favorite artist, musical artist, video games, those type of things. And you're going to list what your favorite media product is. So for example, if your favorite TV show, maybe it's The Office. So you write that down and then you reflect on what needs are met in yourself by watching that show. Or if you have a favorite artist, why do you like that artist? What kind of needs are being met? So you're going to do a lot of reflecting on that. And this is all written out on Moodle. And then there's 4 or 5 of those things that I want you to answer. And then you're going to choose one of those. So if it's The Office, then you answer these questions. How does it give you pleasure? What does this item tell you about yourself? How does it give you a social identity as a person? And what does this media product help you feel about the world? Okay, and so in your reflections, I want you to consider your own uses of media. What gratifications do you receive? How gratifying is your media usage? Is it likely that you would miss certain media if they weren't readily available? You probably, I know you experienced this in your 24-hour challenge, and that was just for a few hours that you did recently. And then this is all in your reflected. These are not the questions. These are just to help you think through it all. How active a media consumer are you? Are you always thoughtful in your choices? Are you more active with one medium than the other? Are you intentional in your media choices? Has that changed as you've grown older? Are you more thoughtful in your choices at different times? So those are some prompts for you to kind of when you're reflecting on the questions that are posed to you in your journal. So that is it for this lecture. So as always, let me know if you have any questions. I look forward to seeing your responses.